The sun bore down on Yates Walker's shoulders like the weight of all his regrets, as he spotted what looked like a bundle of rags heaped against a red boulder in the middle of the New Mexico Territory desert. And when the bundle moved, his heart kicked hard against his ribs. He urged his horse forward, his canteen already in hand before he'd consciously reached for it. The figure was a woman, her blonde hair matted with dust and blood, her lips cracked and bleeding. She wore what had once been a fine traveling dress, now torn and filthy beyond recognition. Her eyes fluttered open as his shadow fell across her face, and in those green depths he saw terror flash before confusion took its place. "Easy now," Yates said, his voice rougher than he intended. He knelt beside her, unscrewing the canteen. "Just small sips. You drink too fast and you will make yourself sick." She grabbed at the canteen with trembling hands, and he had to hold it steady as she drank. Water spilled down her chin, and she made a small sound that was half sob, half relief. Up close, he could see the sunburn across her nose and cheeks, the dried blood at her temple where something had struck her. Her dress was ripped at the shoulder, revealing more burned skin. "My husband," she croaked, her voice like gravel. "Stage. They shot him, driver too, I ran." Yates felt his jaw tighten. Bandits had been getting bolder lately, hitting stages between Albuquerque and Santa Fe with increasing frequency. How long ago? 2 days, maybe 3. I do not know. Her eyes filled with tears that her dehydrated body could barely produce. "I just kept walking. The sun, it was so hot, and I thought I would die out here." "You are not going to die," Yates said firmly. He pulled his bedroll from his saddle and spread it on the ground in the shade of the boulder. "Can you move?" She nodded, but when she tried to stand, her legs gave out. Without hesitation, Yates scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and the thought of how close to death she had come made something protective flare in his chest. He laid her on the bedroll and dampened his bandana with water, carefully cleaning the wound on her head. "My name is Yates Walker. I have a ranch about 15 miles north of here. I was tracking a lost calf when I found you." "Eleanor Fisher," she whispered. "I was married 3 months ago. We were moving to Santa Fe where my husband had business interests. I am a widow now, I suppose, though it does not feel real yet." Yates looked at her left hand and saw the simple gold band. His own marriage had ended 5 years ago when cholera swept through Albuquerque, taking his young wife and their infant daughter. The memory still ached like a broken bone that had never properly healed. "I am sorry for your loss," he said, and meant it. "But right now, we need to get you somewhere safe. Can you ride if I hold you?" Eleanor nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. "The men who attacked us, they might still be looking." "Let them look," Yates said grimly. He had his rifle and his revolver, and he was a fair shot with both. More importantly, he knew this desert like the lines on his own palm. "We will take the long way around, use the arroyos for cover. They will not find us." He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved to his horse, a sturdy chestnut mare named Rosie. The horse nickered softly, as if sensing the woman's distress. Yates mounted first, then pulled Eleanor up in front of him. She sagged against his chest, and he wrapped one arm securely around her waist. "Hold on to me," he said. "I will not let you fall." They rode slowly, Yates constantly scanning the horizon for signs of danger. Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness, her head lolling against his shoulder. He talked to her when she stirred, keeping her alert, asking her questions about where she had come from. "Philadelphia," she murmured. "I met Robert at my cousin's wedding. He seemed so kind, so full of promise. We married quickly, perhaps too quickly. I barely knew him, really." "Is that terrible to say when he is dead?" "You are allowed to be honest," Yates said. "Death does not make people saints." She was quiet for a moment, then said, he gambled, "I found out after we married. That was why we were moving west, to escape his debts. He said it would be a fresh start. Her voice broke. Now I have nothing. No money, no family out here, no home. You are alive, Yates said. That counts for something. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Yates's ranch finally came into view. It was not much, just a small adobe house with a barn and a corral, but it was home. His hired hand, an older Mexican man named Miguel, came out of the barn and his eyes widened when he saw Eleanor. Dios mío, what happened? Stage robbery. She needs help. Can your wife tend to her? Miguel nodded quickly. Maria will take care of her. Bring her inside. Yates dismounted and lifted Eleanor down. She had fallen into a deep sleep, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion now that safety was at hand. Maria appeared in the doorway, a stout woman with kind eyes and capable hands. She took one look at Eleanor and began issuing orders in rapid Spanish. Together, the three of them got Eleanor into Yates's bed, the only real bed in the house. I will sleep in the barn, Yates told Maria. Take care of her, whatever she needs. Maria shooed him away with a wave of her hand. Go, go. This is women's work now. Yates retreated to the front room, suddenly aware of how tense his shoulders were, how fast his heart was still beating. He had seen plenty of death and suffering in his 32 years, but something about finding Eleanor in the desert had shaken him. Maybe it was the way she had looked at him with those desperate green eyes, or maybe it was that she reminded him of his own losses, the fragility of life in this harsh land. Miguel joined him, handing him a tin cup of whiskey. You did a good thing today. Any decent person would have done the same, Yates said. Perhaps, but you were the one who found her. God puts us where we need to be sometimes. Yates did not put much stock in divine intervention, but he did not argue. He sipped his whiskey and stared out at the darkening desert, thinking about the men who had done this. They would get away with it, most likely. They always did out here where the law was thin and justice often came down to who was faster with a gun. Over the next 3 days, Eleanor drifted between sleep and waking. Maria nursed her with cool cloths and broth, treating her sunburn with aloe and her wounds with poultices. Yates kept his distance, busying himself with ranch work, but he found himself checking on her more often than necessary, standing in the doorway of his room and watching the rise and fall of her breathing. On the 4th morning, he came in from checking the cattle to find Eleanor sitting up in bed, her hair freshly washed and braided by Maria. The sunburn had faded to a painful-looking pink, but her eyes were clear and alert. Good morning, she said, and her voice was stronger now. I owe you my life. Yates shifted uncomfortably. You do not owe me anything. I do, though. Eleanor's eyes were serious. Maria told me how far you carried me, how you stayed up that first night making sure I did not develop a fever. You saved more than just my life. You saved my sanity, my hope. I thought I would die alone in that desert, and instead I woke up here in safety. Anyone would have done the same, Yates repeated, but they did not. You did. She gestured to the chair beside the bed. Will you sit? I would like to thank you properly, and it is hard to do that when you are hovering in the doorway like you are afraid of me. Despite himself, Yates smiled slightly and entered the room, settling into the chair. How are you feeling? Like I was left to die in the desert, Eleanor said with a wry twist of her mouth. But better. Much better, thanks to you and Maria. I have been thinking about what I should do next. You should rest and recover, Yates said firmly. You nearly died. You cannot just get up and walk away. But I cannot stay here forever, imposing on your kindness. Why not stay until you are fully healed? Then we can figure out what comes next. Yates did not examine too closely why he was reluctant to see her leave. He told himself it was just common decency. making sure she was truly well before she went back out into the world. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, and something in her expression made him feel exposed, as if she could see straight through to the lonely place he kept carefully hidden. "All right," she said finally. "If you are certain it is not too much trouble, it is no trouble at all." As the days passed, Eleanor grew stronger. She began leaving the bedroom, first to sit in the front room, then to venture outside into the bright New Mexico sunshine. She wore one of Maria's dresses, simple and practical, and she helped with small tasks around the house despite Maria's protests that she should rest. Yates found himself drawn to her in ways he had not expected. She was intelligent and well-read, able to discuss books and politics and philosophy. She was also funny, with a sharp wit that surprised him into laughter more than once. Most of all, she was kind, not in a performative way but in small, genuine gestures. She thanked Miguel for every little thing he did, helped Maria with the washing even when she did not have to, and saved scraps for the barn cats that lived in the hay loft. One evening, Yates was working on mending a fence post when Eleanor approached with a jar of cool water. She sat on the fence rail watching him work. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "How long have you been here?" "About 7 years. I bought the land after." He hesitated, then decided she deserved honesty. "After my wife and daughter died. I needed to get away from Albuquerque, away from the memories. I thought starting fresh out here would help." "Did it?" Yates considered the question. "Not at first. For a long time I was just going through the motions. But slowly, yes, this place has been good for me. It is honest work, and the land does not judge you for your grief." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "I understand that. The need to escape, I mean. Even before Robert died, I think I was looking for a way out. He was not cruel exactly, but he was not the man I thought I was marrying. Out here, everything is so vast and open. It feels like you could become anyone you wanted to be." "Who do you want to be?" Yates asked. She smiled a little sadly. "I do not know yet, but I think I would like to find out." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Yates lay awake in the barn, thinking about Eleanor's words. He had spent 5 years building walls around himself, telling himself he was content with solitude. But her presence in his life, even for this short time, had shown him how much he had been missing. He missed conversation and companionship. He missed having someone to share his thoughts with, someone who cared about his day. He missed love, if he was being completely honest with himself. But Eleanor was a widow, still grieving. And even if she was not, what did he have to offer her? A small ranch in the middle of nowhere, a life of hard work and simple pleasures. She was educated and cultured, from a world of fine things and sophisticated society. Once she recovered, she would want to return to that world, and he would let her go because it was the right thing to do. The next morning, Yates rode into town to pick up supplies and to inquire at the sheriff's office about the stage robbery. Eleanor asked to come with him, saying she wanted to see if there was any word about recovering her husband's body or belongings. Yates agreed, though he was wary of bringing her into town where her presence would raise questions. The ride to Albuquerque took most of the morning. Eleanor sat beside him on the wagon seat, taking in the landscape with curious eyes. She asked him about the plants and animals they saw, about the distant mountains, about the lives of the people who lived in this territory. She was genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation, and Yates found himself opening up in ways he had not done in years. The sheriff's office was a small adobe building in the center of town. Sheriff Tom Harrison was a grizzled man in his 50s with a reputation for being fair but tough. He looked up from his desk when Yates and Eleanor entered, and his eyes narrowed slightly. "Yates Walker, been a while. What brings you to town?" "This is Eleanor Fisher." I found her in the desert about a week ago. She was on a stage that got robbed somewhere between here and Santa Fe." The sheriff's expression sobered. "We heard about that. Found the stage and 2 bodies 3 days ago. Driver and a passenger male, both shot." Eleanor's face went pale, but she kept her composure. "That would be my husband, Robert Fisher. What happened to their bodies? Buried them in the town cemetery. I am sorry for your loss, madam." The sheriff pulled out a ledger. "Can you tell me what happened?" Eleanor recounted the attack, her voice steady but strained. The bandits had stopped the stage at gunpoint, demanding money and valuables. When Robert had tried to fight back, they had shot him and the driver. Eleanor had run while they were distracted, hiding in the rocks until they left. "Did you get a good look at any of them?" the sheriff asked. 3 men, all wearing bandanas over their faces. One was tall and thin. Another was heavy-set with a scar on his hand. The third was younger, maybe early 20s. Eleanor frowned, remembering. The young one seemed nervous, like he did not want to be there. The sheriff wrote this down. "That matches some other descriptions we have had. There is a gang working this territory, hitting stages and robbing travelers. We have not been able to catch them yet, but we are working on it." "What about my husband's belongings?" Eleanor asked. "Was there anything?" The sheriff shook his head. "Stage was cleaned out. They took everything of value." "I am sorry, madam. I know that is not what you want to hear." Eleanor nodded, blinking back tears. Yates wanted to reach for her hand to offer comfort, but he kept his hands at his sides. They were in public, and he was already too aware of the curious glances being directed their way. After leaving the sheriff's office, they stopped at the general store for supplies. The proprietor, Mrs. Henderson, was a notorious gossip, and her eyes lit up when she saw Eleanor with Yates. "Well, Yates Walker, who is this lovely young lady?" "This is Mrs. Fisher. She is recovering at my ranch after a difficult ordeal." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "Is that so? How very charitable of you." Yates could hear the speculation in her voice and knew that by tomorrow, half the town would be talking about the mysterious woman staying at his ranch. Let them talk. He did not care what people thought. Eleanor picked out a few basic necessities, including fabric for a new dress. When she went to pay, she pulled out a small leather purse she had been carrying when Yates found her. "I have a little money," she said quietly. "Not much, but enough for this." "Put your money away," Yates said. "Consider it part of your recovery." "I cannot keep taking from you," Eleanor protested. "You are not taking, I am giving." Yates paid Mrs. Henderson and gathered up the packages. "Come on, we have a long ride back." On the way out of town, they passed the small cemetery where Robert Fisher had been buried. Eleanor asked Yates to stop, and he waited with the wagon while she walked among the graves, finally stopping at a fresh mound of earth marked with a simple wooden cross. She stood there for a long time, and Yates wondered what she was thinking, what she was feeling. Grief, relief, some complicated mixture of both. When she returned to the wagon, her eyes were red but dry. "Thank you for waiting. I needed to say goodbye." They rode in silence for a while, the wagon creaking along the rutted road. Finally, Eleanor said, "I told him I forgave him. For the gambling, for the lies, for bringing me out here under false pretenses. I do not know if he can hear me wherever he is, but I needed to say it. I needed to let it go so I can move forward." "That takes courage," Yates said, "or desperation." Eleanor looked at him. "What am I going to do, Yates? I have no money, no family nearby, no prospects. I cannot stay at your ranch forever, but I have nowhere else to go." Yates had been thinking about this for days now, turning it over in his mind. "You could stay," he said carefully. "Not as a guest, but as someone who lives there. Maria needs help with the house and the garden. Miguel needs help with the chickens and the smaller animals. And I could use someone who can read and write to help me keep the ranch books. I would pay you a fair wage. Eleanor stared at him. You would do that. Give me a job, why not? You need a place to stay and I need the help. It makes sense. It made more than sense, Yates thought. It meant she would stay, that he would see her every day, talk to her every evening. The thought filled him with a warmth he had not felt in years. I accept, Eleanor said, and the smile that broke across her face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. Thank you, Yates. Thank you for giving me a chance to build a new life. They shook hands on it, a formal gesture that felt inadequate for the weight of what they were agreeing to. But it was a start, Yates told himself. A beginning. Over the following weeks, Eleanor settled into life at the ranch. She proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, never complaining about the long days or the difficult tasks. She helped Maria with the cooking and cleaning, tended the vegetable garden, collected eggs from the chickens, and in the evenings, she sat with Yates going over the ranch accounts and planning for the future. It was during those quiet evening hours that Yates found himself falling for her, though he tried to resist it. He would watch her bent over the ledger, her brow furrowed in concentration as she carefully recorded expenses and income, and his heart would clench with an emotion he had thought long dead. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was smart and capable, kind and brave. She had survived something that would have broken a weaker person, and instead of giving up, she was building a new life with determination and grace. One evening in late August, about 6 weeks after Yates had found Eleanor in the desert, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Maria and Miguel had gone to visit Maria's sister in Albuquerque, leaving Yates and Eleanor alone at the ranch. It is beautiful here, Eleanor said softly. I never appreciated how beautiful the desert could be until I came here. In Philadelphia, everything was so crowded and loud. Here you can hear yourself think. Do you miss it? Your old life? Yates asked. Eleanor considered the question. I miss some things. The libraries, the theaters, the museums. But I do not miss the person I was there. I was so passive, so willing to let others make decisions for me. Marrying Robert was the biggest decision I ever made, and it was the wrong one. Out here, I feel like I am finally becoming who I was meant to be. And who is that? She turned to look at him, and the setting sun caught in her hair, turning it to gold. Someone brave, someone strong, someone who takes risks and fights for what she wants. You were always that person, Yates said. You survived alone in the desert for days. That takes more courage than most people have. I survived because you found me, Eleanor said. Because you risked your own safety to help a stranger. That says more about you than it does about me. They were sitting close together on the porch steps, and Yates was suddenly intensely aware of the warmth of her body, the sweet smell of the soap she used, the way her eyes held his without looking away. He wanted to kiss her. The desire was so strong it was almost painful. Eleanor, he began, but she cut him off. I know what you are going to say, that it is too soon, that I am still grieving, that we should be sensible and proper. But Yates, I have been thinking about this for weeks now, and I do not want to be sensible. I want to tell you the truth. I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, bold and undeniable. Yates felt his heart hammer in his chest. You do not have to say anything right now, Eleanor continued, a slight tremor in her voice. I just needed you to know. I needed to be brave enough to say it out loud. You saved more than just my life when you found me in that desert. You saved my spirit, my ability to hope for the future. You showed me what kindness looks like, what true strength is. How could I not fall in love with you? Yates reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I have been falling in love with you since the moment you opened your eyes and looked at me in the desert. I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was too soon, too complicated. But Eleanor, you have brought light back into my life. You have made me remember what it feels like to want something, to hope for something beyond just getting through another day." "Then why are we fighting it?" Eleanor asked. She leaned closer, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest. "Why are we denying ourselves something that could make us both happy?" Yates had no answer to that, none that made sense anymore. He cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone, and then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when she sighed against his lips and kissed him back, something inside him broke open. He pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, pouring all of his loneliness and longing and love into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Eleanor's eyes were shining. That was worth waiting for. Yates laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "We should probably talk about this, figure out what it means, where we go from here. What if we just let it be what it is?" Eleanor suggested. "We do not have to have all the answers right now. We can just be together and see where it leads." "I can do that," Yates said and kissed her again, softer this time, sweet and full of promise. They sat on the porch until the stars came out, talking and kissing and planning a future that suddenly seemed bright and full of possibility. Yates told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the herd and maybe add some horses. Eleanor told him about her love of books and her secret dream of maybe starting a small lending library in Albuquerque, something to bring education and entertainment to the people of the territory. "We could do that," Yates said. "Once the ranch is more profitable, we could invest in books, set up a room in town. You could run it." "You would do that for me?" Eleanor asked. "I would do anything for you," Yates said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship deepened and grew. They were careful to maintain propriety, especially when Miguel and Maria were around, but everyone could see how they looked at each other, how they found excuses to touch in passing, how they talked late into the night about everything and nothing. In October, Yates asked Eleanor to marry him. They were on horseback, riding out to check on the cattle, when he suddenly pulled his horse to a stop at the top of a ridge overlooking the ranch. The autumn sun bathed everything in golden light, and Eleanor looked so beautiful it made his chest ache. "Marry me," he said, the words coming out more abruptly than he had planned. "I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but Eleanor, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together, have children if we are blessed with them, grow old watching the sunset from that porch. Marry me." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes. I love you, Yates Walker, and I want all of those things too." He dismounted quickly and helped her down, then pulled a simple ring from his pocket. It had been his mother's, the only thing of value he had inherited when she passed years ago. "It is not much," he said, sliding it onto her finger. "But it belonged to a woman who loved deeply and well, and I hope it brings us the same happiness." "It is perfect," Eleanor said, looking at the small band of gold with its single tiny diamond. "Everything about this is perfect." They married in November in the small church in Albuquerque. It was a simple ceremony with Miguel and Maria as witnesses, and a few friends from town who had come to know Eleanor over the past months. Eleanor wore a new dress she had sewn herself, pale blue with white lace at the collar, and she carried a bouquet of dried desert flowers. Yates wore his best suit, the one he had not worn since his first wife's funeral, but which he had cleaned and mended for this happiest of occasions, when the preacher pronounced them man and wife. Yates kissed Eleanor with all the love in his heart, and the small crowd cheered. Afterward, there was a modest celebration at the ranch with food and music and dancing. Yates had never been much of a dancer, but he waltzed with his new wife under the stars, holding her close and feeling like the luckiest man alive. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Eleanor came to him with trust and tenderness. "I want you to know," she said softly, her hands trembling slightly as she began to unbutton her dress, "that I have never felt safe enough to truly give myself to someone before. Even with Robert, there was always a distance, a holding back. But with you, Yates, I feel completely safe, completely loved." Yates took her hands, stilling them. "We have all the time in the world. There is no rush, I know, but I do not want to wait. I want to start our life together, all of it, right now." She looked up at him with those green eyes that had first caught at his heart in the desert. "Make love to me, husband." He did, with patience and care, showing her with his hands and his lips and his body how deeply he loved her, how precious she was to him. And when she cried out his name in the darkness, holding him close, Yates felt the last pieces of his broken heart finally knit back together. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. There was a drought that summer that tested the ranch's water resources, and they lost some cattle. There were also moments of adjustment, learning to live together as husband and wife, navigating the small irritations and differences that came with merging two lives. But through it all, their love grew stronger and deeper. Eleanor proved to be an invaluable partner in running the ranch. She took over the bookkeeping entirely, finding ways to cut costs and increase profits that Yates had never considered. She also started a small vegetable garden that she expanded every year, eventually growing enough produce to sell at the market in Albuquerque. The extra income helped them through the lean times. In their second year of marriage, Eleanor became pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. Yates could not help but remember losing his first wife and child, and the fear of going through that again sometimes woke him in the night. But Eleanor remained healthy and strong throughout the pregnancy, and in the spring of 1887, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named James after Yates's father. Holding his son for the first time, feeling the tiny weight of him in his arms, Yates wept. These were tears of joy and relief and overwhelming love, but also of grief for the daughter he had lost and never got to watch grow up. Eleanor, exhausted but radiant, reached up and wiped his tears away. "He is perfect," she whispered, "our perfect little boy." "Thank you," Yates said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me hope again." James was an easy baby, healthy and happy, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. Yates doted on him, spending every spare moment holding him or playing with him. Eleanor would often find them in the barn, Yates showing their son the horses and talking to him about the ranch, as if the infant could understand every word. "You are going to spoil him," she teased one afternoon, coming out to the barn to find Yates cradling James while checking on a mare who was due to foal. "Is that possible? Can you spoil a baby with love?" Yates asked, smiling at her. "I suppose we will find out," Eleanor said, wrapping her arms around both of them. "But I love watching you with him. You are such a good father, Yates." "I am trying. That is all any of us can do, right? Try our best and hope it is enough." When James was 6 months old, Eleanor approached Yates with an idea. "I have been thinking about that lending library we talked about when we first got together. I think we could actually do it now. We have some savings, and there is that empty building next to the general store in town. We could rent it, buy some books, start small." Yates considered this. It would be a risk, investing their hard-earned money in something that might not succeed, but he had learned to trust Eleanor's instincts, and he could see how much this meant to her. "Let us do it," he said. "But we do it together. I will help you set it up, get the word out. This will be our project as a family." Eleanor's face lit up and she threw her arms around him. Really, you mean it? I mean it. Every person deserves access to books and learning. If we can provide that for this community, we should. They worked on the library throughout that fall and winter. Yates built shelves and tables while Eleanor wrote to publishers and booksellers back east, ordering books with the money they had saved. They chose carefully, getting a mix of practical books about farming and ranching, classic literature, popular novels, and children's books. Eleanor also solicited donations from people in town, and soon they had a respectable collection. The library opened in the spring of 1888, and to Eleanor's delight, it was an immediate success. People came from all over the territory to borrow books, and Eleanor became a beloved figure in Albuquerque, always ready with a recommendation or a kind word. She started a children's reading hour on Saturday mornings, and Yates would often come to town with James to watch Eleanor read to a room full of rapt children. "You are incredible," he told her after one such session. "Look at what you have built here. Look at the difference you are making." Eleanor blushed with pleasure. "I could not have done it without you. None of this would be possible without your support and encouragement. We make a good team," Yates said, kissing her temple. "Always have." Life continued to unfold with its mixture of joy and hardship. There were good years when the rains came and the cattle thrived, and lean years when they had to tighten their belts and pray for better times. Eleanor had two more children, a daughter named Sarah in 1889 and another son named Thomas in 1891. Their house rang with laughter and noise, and Yates often paused in his work to marvel at the family they had created together. The library continued to grow and prosper. Eleanor eventually hired an assistant, a young woman named Clara who shared her passion for books and learning. This gave Eleanor more time to spend at the ranch with the children, though she still went into town several times a week to oversee operations. One evening in the summer of 1892, Eleanor and Yates sat on their porch watching their three children play in the yard. James, now 5, was teaching 3-year-old Sarah how to catch a ball, while Thomas, just over a year old, toddled around trying to keep up with his older siblings. The sun was setting, painting the desert in those shades of orange and purple that Eleanor loved so much. "Do you ever think about that day in the desert?" Eleanor asked, leaning her head on Yates's shoulder. "The day you found me, all the time," Yates admitted. "I think about how easily I could have missed you, how if I had gone a different direction looking for that calf, our paths never would have crossed. It terrifies me, thinking about all the ways we might never have found each other." "But we did find each other," Eleanor said. "Or you found me, and then we found our way to this beautiful life together. You saved more than just my life that day, Yates. You saved all the years of happiness we have had since then. You saved the children we have brought into the world. You saved the person I have become." Yates pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "You give me too much credit. You saved yourself, Eleanor. You were the one who survived in that desert for days, who had the strength to build a new life from nothing. I just happened to be there at the right time." "No," Eleanor said firmly, sitting up to look at him directly. "You did more than just happen to be there. You made a choice to stop, to help, to take me in. You made a choice to see me as more than a burden or an obligation. You saw me, truly saw me, and you loved what you saw." That changed everything. Sarah ran up to the porch, her face flushed with excitement. "Mama, Papa, look what I can do." She proceeded to do a wobbly cartwheel that ended with her landing on her bottom. Instead of crying, she laughed, and James and Thomas laughed with her. "That was wonderful, sweetheart," Eleanor called. "Very impressive." Yates watched his daughter scramble back to her feet and run off to try again, and his heart swelled with so much love he thought it might burst. This was everything he had never dared to hope for after losing his first family. A wife he loved desperately, children who were healthy and happy, a home filled with warmth and laughter. "I love you," he said to Eleanor, taking her hand. "I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to stay all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy with a small ranch and big dreams. Thank you for finding me," Eleanor said, tears glittering in her eyes. "Thank you for loving me, for building this life with me, for giving me a family and a purpose. I was so lost when you found me in so many ways, and you helped me find my way home." They sat there as the stars began to appear, holding hands and watching their children play, and Yates thought about the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A stage robbery, a walk into the desert, a cowboy searching for a lost calf. Such small, random events that had led to this moment of perfect happiness. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and the animals. Sarah was bright and curious, always asking questions and reading every book she could get her hands on. Thomas was the wild one, fearless and mischievous, keeping his parents on their toes. When James was 10, he asked Yates about his first family. They were riding out to check the fences, just the two of them, and the boy had been unusually quiet. "Papa, did you have other children before us?" he finally asked. Yates had known this conversation would come eventually, but it still caught him off guard. "Yes, I did. I had a baby daughter with my first wife. They both died of cholera before you were born." "You still think about them?" James asked. "Every day," Yates said honestly, "but not in a sad way, not anymore. I think about them with love and gratitude for the time we had, even though it was short. And I think about how, if things had been different, I never would have met your mother. I never would have had you and your brother and sister. I believe that the people we love, even after they are gone, they shape who we become. They lead us to where we need to be." James considered this. "So your first daughter led you to find Mama in the desert?" "In a way, yes. Losing her broke my heart, but it also made me compassionate enough, brave enough, to help someone in trouble. It made me understand how precious life is, how important it is to seize happiness when you find it." "I am glad you found Mama," James said. "I am glad you saved her." "So am I, son. So am I." The library in Albuquerque became a fixture of the community, expanding twice over the years as its collection grew. Eleanor's dream of bringing books and learning to the territory had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. She started hosting lectures and discussions, bringing in speakers on various topics, turning the library into a true cultural center. In 1895, when Eleanor was 32 and Yates was 42, they took a trip to Philadelphia so Eleanor could visit the city of her birth and introduce her children to what was left of her family there. Her parents had passed away, but she still had cousins and aunts who were overjoyed to meet her Western family. The city was everything Yates had imagined and more, bustling and crowded and full of noise. James, Sarah, and Thomas were wide-eyed at the tall buildings and the crowds of people. They visited museums and theaters, ate at fancy restaurants, and stayed in a real hotel. But after 2 weeks, Yates noticed that Eleanor seemed restless. One evening, as they sat in their hotel room after the children had gone to sleep, she voiced what she was feeling. "I thought coming back here would feel like coming home," she said softly. "But it does not. It feels like visiting a foreign country. Home is New Mexico, the ranch, the library, our life there. This is not my world anymore." "Are you sad about that?" Yates asked. Eleanor thought about it, then shook her head. "No. I am grateful, actually. It means I have truly built a new life, that I have become a different person than the scared young woman who got on that stage with Robert all those years ago. It means I know where I belong." They returned to New Mexico with relief, and when the ranch came into view from the road, all three children cheered. Miguel and Maria had been watching the place, and they greeted them with tears and hugs and a feast Maria had been preparing all day. "It is good to have you home," Miguel said, clapping Yates on the back. The ranch was too quiet without the children running around. That night, lying in their own bed, Eleanor snuggled close to Yates. "Thank you for taking me to Philadelphia. I needed to see it to know for certain that my life is here now." "I would take you anywhere you wanted to go," Yates said. "But I am glad you want to be here. I am glad this is home for you." "You are home for me," Eleanor corrected. "Wherever you are, that is where I belong." As the new century approached, Yates and Eleanor watched their children grow into young adults. James, at 13, was already a skilled rancher, working alongside his father with confidence and competence. Sarah, at 11, spent every spare moment in the library, and Eleanor began teaching her how to run it, knowing that someday her daughter might take over. Thomas, at 9, was still figuring out where his passions lay, trying everything from ranching to reading to carpentry. In 1899, when Eleanor was 36 and Yates was 43, she came to him with news that surprised them both. She was pregnant again, something neither of them had expected at this stage of their lives. "Are you sure?" Yates asked, his hand going to her still flat stomach. "I am sure." The midwife confirmed it. "We are going to have another baby, Yates." Eleanor's expression was a mixture of joy and nervousness. "I know we were not planning on this, but I am happy." "Are you?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Yates said, pulling her into his arms. "Another child, another blessing. Yes, I am happy." Their fourth child, a daughter they named Rose, was born in early 1900, right at the turn of the century. The birth was harder than Eleanor's previous ones, and for a few terrifying hours, Yates feared he might lose her. But Eleanor was strong and she pulled through, though the midwife warned them this should be their last child. "That is all right," Eleanor said, exhausted but radiant as she held tiny Rose. "4 beautiful children are more than I ever dreamed of having. We are blessed, Yates. So incredibly blessed." Rose was a happy baby, doted on by her older siblings who treated her like a living doll. James, now a serious teenager, was surprisingly gentle with her. Sarah loved to read to her baby sister, and Thomas appointed himself her protector, always making sure she was safe and happy. The years flowed by like water, swift and relentless. James grew into a man, taking on more and more responsibility at the ranch. When he was 20, he married a sweet girl named Emma from Albuquerque, and they built a small house on the far corner of the ranch property. A year later, they gave Yates and Eleanor their first grandchild, a boy they named Yates Jr. Holding his grandson, Yates felt the circle of life complete itself in a beautiful way. He had lost a daughter so long ago, and the pain of that loss had never fully disappeared. But it had transformed over the years into something else, something that made him appreciate every moment with his family, that made him grateful for each day he got to spend with the people he loved. Sarah, at 18, took over running the library from Eleanor, proving herself to be just as capable and passionate about it as her mother. She had plans to expand even further, to start libraries in other towns across the territory. Eleanor supported her completely, proud of the woman her daughter had become. Thomas, at 16, discovered he had a talent for working with horses. He started training them, selling them, building a reputation across the territory for his skill. Yates could not have been prouder, watching his middle son find his calling. And Rose, at 5, was the light of everyone's life, precocious and charming, keeping the whole family entertained with her antics and observations. One evening in 1905, Yates and Eleanor sat on their porch, just as they had so many times over the years. They were both in their 50s now, their hair streaked with gray, their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. But their love had not dimmed. If anything, it had grown deeper and richer with time. "Do you remember what you said to me that day on the porch, all those years ago?" Yates asked, taking Eleanor's hand. "When you told me you were falling in love with me." "I remember," Eleanor said, smiling. "I said you saved more than just my life." "You were right. I did save your life that day in the desert, but Eleanor, you saved mine too. You gave me a reason to live again, to hope again, to love again. You gave me this beautiful family, this incredible life. We saved each other." Eleanor leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet. "We did. And I would do it all again, every moment, every challenge, every joy. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Yates Walker. And you are the best thing that ever happened to me, Eleanor Walker. My desert flower, my love, my life." They sat together as the sun set, holding hands and watching the desert turn purple and gold in the fading light. In the house behind them, they could hear Rose laughing at something Thomas had said, could hear James and Emma talking with their son, could hear Sarah playing the piano that Yates had bought for her last birthday. This was everything, Yates thought. This moment, this family, this love. A cowboy finding a lost woman in the desert, and both of them finding their way home through each other. It was the kind of story people told around campfires, the kind of love that became legend. But for Yates and Eleanor, it was simply their life, their truth, their happily ever after. The years continued to unfold, bringing more grandchildren, more joy, more love. When Yates was 65 and Eleanor was 58, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with all their children and grandchildren gathered around them. It was a loud, chaotic, wonderful celebration, filled with food and music and laughter. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Yates and Eleanor took a walk out into the desert, retracing the path Yates had taken that day so long ago when he found her. The moon was full, lighting their way, and the desert was alive with the sounds of night creatures. "This is where I found you," Yates said, stopping near the red boulder where Eleanor had been collapsed all those years ago. "Right here." Eleanor looked at the boulder, then at the vast expanse of desert stretching out in all directions. "I was so scared that day. I thought I was going to die. I had given up hope. And then you appeared like an angel, like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I was praying." "I was just a cowboy looking for a lost calf," Yates said, "but I found something so much more precious." "We found each other," Eleanor said. "Against all odds, in the middle of nowhere, we found each other, and we built a life more beautiful than anything I could have imagined." They stood there together, two people who had loved deeply and well, who had built a family and a legacy, who had turned tragedy into triumph and loss into love. The desert stretched out around them, vast and unforgiving and beautiful, just as it had been that day 30 years ago. But they were no longer alone. They had each other, and they had the family they had created together, and they had the sure knowledge that their love would endure long after they were gone, carried on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch and the library, in all the lives they had touched. Yates pulled Eleanor close, holding her as he had held her that first night when she was weak and frightened and nearly dead. But now she was strong and vibrant and full of life, and he was no longer a lonely cowboy but a man surrounded by love and family and purpose. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I have loved you since the moment I found you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Eleanor said, her arms tight around him. "You saved me, Yates. You saved more than just my life. You saved my soul, my spirit, my ability to love and trust and hope. You saved everything that matters." They walked back to the house hand in hand. Two souls intertwined. Two lives made one through love and commitment, and the strange, beautiful accident of a cowboy finding a lost woman in the desert. Behind them, the boulder stood silent and eternal, a marker of where their story had begun, a testament to the power of being in the right place at the right time, of choosing love over fear, of saving and being saved in return. The rest of their years were filled with the simple pleasures of a life well lived. They watched their grandchildren grow, welcomed great-grandchildren into the world, saw the library expand to 3 different locations across New Mexico, and witnessed the ranch prosper and grow beyond their initial dreams. James took over the ranch operations fully when Yates was 70, allowing Yates to spend more time doing the things he loved, riding through the desert with Eleanor, playing with his great-grandchildren, sitting on the porch reading the books Eleanor recommended to him. Sarah's libraries had become institutions, providing education and entertainment to thousands of people across the territory. Thomas's horse ranch had become one of the most successful in the Southwest. And Rose, their youngest, had become a teacher, carrying on her mother's passion for education in a different way. When Yates was 75 and Eleanor was 68, they took one final trip out to the boulder where their story had begun. It was harder for them to make the journey now, their bodies aged and worn, but they were determined. They rode slowly, Yates on his horse and Eleanor on hers, taking frequent breaks to rest. When they finally reached the boulder, they dismounted carefully, helping each other. The desert had not changed much in the 43 years since that fateful day. It was still vast and beautiful and dangerous, still a place where life and death walked hand in hand. "Thank you," Eleanor said, her voice soft. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing a person who needed help instead of a problem to be avoided. Thank you for every day since then. Thank you for fighting to survive," Yates said. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me you loved me. Thank you for building this life with me, for giving me children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, for filling my days with love and purpose." They stood there together, two old people who had loved each other well, who had built something lasting and beautiful out of the ashes of their previous lives. Around them, the desert was quiet except for the whisper of wind through the sagebrush, and above them, the sky was that brilliant blue that seemed to exist only in New Mexico. "When I am gone," Yates said, "I want to be buried here in this desert. It is where I found you, where our life together truly began. Then we will be buried here together," Eleanor said firmly, "because I cannot imagine eternity without you by my side." They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in those beloved shades of orange and purple. Their family was gathered for Sunday dinner, as had become tradition, and the house was full of noise and laughter and love. Yates and Eleanor stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. "Look what we made," Eleanor said, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Look at all of this." "We made a family," Yates said. "We made a home. We made a life worth living." They joined their family for dinner, surrounded by 4 generations of people who existed because a cowboy had stopped to help a dying woman in the desert, because that woman had been brave enough to survive and build something new, because 2 broken people had found each other and chosen love over fear. Years later, when Yates passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Eleanor held his hand and whispered all the things she loved about him, all the ways he had made her life better, all the gratitude in her heart for the day he had found her. She lived for 3 more years, long enough to see her youngest great-grandchild born, long enough to know that her legacy would continue. When Eleanor died at 78, her children buried her next to Yates near the red boulder in the desert, just as they had requested. On the shared headstone, they carved, "Yates and Eleanor Walker, two souls who found each other in the desert and built a love that changed the world." The ranch continued to thrive under James and his descendants. The libraries that Sarah had built became even more important as New Mexico grew and changed. Thomas's horses were legendary across the Southwest. Rose's students remembered her as the teacher who had made learning magical. And all of them, along with their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, told the story of how their family had begun. They told of a cowboy who had been riding through the desert looking for a lost calf and had found a dying woman instead. They told of how he had saved her life and how she had saved his in return. They told of a love that had been born out of tragedy and survival, a love that had been strong enough to build a dynasty, to create a legacy that would last for generations. And sometimes, when the desert wind blew just right, it seemed to carry whispers of that love, of two voices intertwined, of laughter and joy, and the absolute certainty that some people are meant to find each other, no matter how impossible the odds. The red boulder stood as a marker of where it all began, a testament to the day when a lost woman and a lonely cowboy found exactly what they needed in each other. Their story became part of the land itself, woven into the fabric of New Mexico, a reminder that sometimes being saved is not just about surviving but about finding your purpose, your home, your love. Eleanor had been right all those years ago when she told Yates that he had saved more than just her life. He had saved her future, her happiness, her soul, and she had done the same for him. In the end, that was what love was. Two people saving each other over and over again in big ways and small, through actions and words and simple presence. It was choosing each other every day, building something beautiful and lasting together, and leaving a legacy that would echo through time. The desert remembered them. The ranch remembered them. The libraries remembered them. But most of all, their family remembered them, carrying forward the love and values and strength that Yates and Eleanor had embodied. And in that remembrance, in that continuation, they lived on forever. Two souls joined in the desert and never parted, even by death.